In these uncertain times, it's easy to focus on the numbers, what's going out versus what's coming in. But you are missing something deeper when it comes to your spouse's spending habits. I once worked with a couple who constantly clashed over spending habits. The wife enjoyed her coffee runs in the morning, while the husband couldn't understand why she just couldn't make coffee at home. At the same time, the husband would turn to online shopping during particularly stressful times at work. They both felt unseen and unheard. What seemed like disagreements about small spending habits was actually about something much deeper. It wasn't about the coffee or the online shopping at all. Money often tells a deeper story in marriage, and if you're not paying attention, you could be overlooking something going on much deeper beneath the surface. Think about it. Money isn't just transactional, it's emotional. Every time we make a decision about money, we bring our internal world into that decision. The way we feel about ourselves, our stress levels, our fears, they all show up in how we handle money. And this can either bring couples closer together or pull them apart. When your spouse spends on something that feels unnecessary to you, whether it's a coffee run, an unexpected device, or a hobby that they have, how do you react? Do you brush it off? Do you get frustrated? Or have you just simply accepted that that's just how they are? But what if it's more than that? Let me tell you about another couple I worked with. One spouse loved spending money on their hobbies, especially when it came to new equipment. Meanwhile, the other spouse was tightening the budget to the extremes, even cutting out small luxuries. What they didn't realize was that their behaviors was feeding into a cycle. The spouse with the hobby was feeling disconnected and was turning to their hobby for comfort, while the budget-conscious spouse felt more anxious about the future and needed to feel in control in order to feel more secure. Neither of them could see the deeper emotional needs that was driving their action. What if your spouse's spending isn't about indulgence, but rather a way of seeking comfort and control? What if cutting back isn't about discipline, but about some underlying anxiety? Let's talk about how different people handle financial stress. Some of us may loosen the reins when things feel out of control. We start spending money on small comforts to feel more reassured. Others might pull back, avoiding any spending, sometimes to the extreme. This dynamic is extremely common during times of economic stress. So here's a first step in changing the cycle. Sit down together and track your spending and your emotional state at the time of making a purchase. What was going through your mind at the time of clicking the buy now button or swiping your card? Were either of you feeling anxious, stressed, or even feeling neglected about something? Understanding the why behind your spending helps both of you see that it's not just about being good or bad with money. Here's where the tension starts to build between the two of you. When one spouse feels the urge to spend in order to self-soothe, while the other spouse feels the need to pull back in order to feel secure, that's when disconnect happens. Without understanding the emotional needs behind each other's spending habits, couples misinterpret each other's actions all the time. The spender might get labeled as irresponsible or reckless, while the saver gets labeled as controlling and cold. But these behaviors are usually defenses. They're ways for both spouses to try and feel safe. Here's what I want you to remember. It's not just about money. When you focus on spending as just a financial issue, you miss the opportunity to understand the deeper emotional needs behind those behaviors. Money isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about how we feel emotionally connected within our marriage. So, how do you move from tension to understanding? Start by paying closer attention to each other's spending. Not as judging if it's bad or good, but as a way of communicating. When one spouse spends, it's a way of feeling more independent and reassured during a moment of insecurity. When the other spouse pulls back, they might be seeking a sense of stability. Let me give you another example. I once worked with a couple who finally understood that their arguments were not about overspending or how tight the budget was. What was really happening was one spouse felt unsupported emotionally, and so they turned to shopping as a release, while the other was afraid that they were losing control of their future. Once they started talking about these issues more openly, the argument started to fade away, because what they started to understand was that it wasn't about the money. It was about the emotional connection that they were craving and they weren't getting it. So here's another practical step. Sit down and schedule regular check-ins where you don't just talk about the numbers, you also check in about your emotional well-being together. Focus on questions that help both of you create a space of safety where you both can feel seen and heard. In a healthy marriage, both spouses can feel both independent and connected at the same time. The key is recognizing that you both are seeking security, but you might be going about it in very opposite ways. One spouse might need freedom and flexibility, while the other spouse craves planning and structure. When couples work together to understand deeper reasons behind each other's spending habits, they build a foundation of trust and security. Each spouse starts to feel as if they're being seen and heard and their emotional needs are being met, which in turn makes them more willing to collaborate and work together. When we focus on the emotional side of money, something shifts. It's no longer about balancing budgets, it's about balancing each other's emotional needs. By stepping into each other's shoes and understanding where each other's financial behaviors are coming from, and recognizing that each person is simply trying to feel secure, you open the door to a more stronger and connected marriage. This week, I encourage you to have a meaningful, open, and honest conversation with your spouse. Not about the numbers, but about how you're feeling about money, your future, and your emotional needs within your marriage. When you understand these dynamics, you'll discover that financial harmony is within reach, and your marriage will grow even stronger. If you or your spouse are looking for ways to break these harmful patterns and start spending money more intentionally, you'll definitely want to check out my previous video. I dive into a spending trap that many couples fall into, especially during times of stress and during these economic times. It's called doom spending. And it's where impulsive purchases are used as a way of coping with fear and uncertainty. Understanding these patterns are key to building long-term financial security, so be sure to watch it together.